Okay, so there's a lot of talk about Section 8 vouchers and participants who have been on Section 8 for long periods of time. Um, I believe, like, if they've been on Section 8 for like maybe 15, 20 years, or, you know, and they have not increased their salary, or if they have not, you know, gotten better job opportunities where they make more money and they're able to no longer need Section 8. And that is not, unfortunately, that's not a reality for everyone. And everyone's situation is a lot different than others. Some people have went back to school. Some people are where they really, really want to change their life, and they try to work hard at doing so, and they will go back to school and they'll acquire a degree or two or certificate, um, or they'll get a job promotion and they begin to make more money, and they find a job and they do a lot better, and they may get to a point where they may not even really need Section 8. And I believe there are some people who are fortunate enough to get to a point where they work their way off of those programs. But that isn't a reality for everyone's situation. And here's the problem. A lot of times people are very judgmental about situations that they feel that they think they know and they're unaffected by, but they feel they're affected by it. They feel because they're a taxpayer that their money is going for these programs, and it may good and well be, but everybody is not the same. Everybody doesn't do the same things. They don't live the same way. They don't have the same mindset. And I feel like I repeat that slogan in almost every video, even with religion, because we're all different individuals. So these are some of the issues that have come up about people who, you know, are on these programs. What they don't realize is that some of these people work low wage jobs and they don't get good pay for the low wage jobs. So there's been several protests, even here in California, for McDonald's, Walmart. That seems to be an ongoing battle. So you see, while you're busy blaming problems on hungry children, seniors who use food stamps, Walmart is getting 6.2 billion in tax money. And so you see, there was a strike for $15, and the union, they were trying to fight. People who work for McDonald's, they were trying to fight for more wages, and they wanted their pay to be raised to like $15, because you have some people who they come from another country and they may had a different, you know, level of education, and maybe the education is a lot different. Or even if they had, like, let's say they came from some country and they got a degree in their country. When a person comes from another country, from what I've heard from people who have come from other countries, that a lot of times they can't use those degrees here in the States. So they end up, it's like starting all over again. They have to go back to school, start all over again. Sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't for some people. Sometimes there's language barriers and, you know, whatever else barriers. And then sometimes the units they have at a school somewhere in some other country is not transferable here. So therefore they end up at the low wage level and these jobs. So people would assume that, oh, okay, well, maybe they didn't have much education. Some people have and some people haven't. Then you have people here in the States who maybe they are abusing welfare. Okay, that's not everyone. There are some cases where you have people who aren't really, you know, aspiring to go back to school or to better themselves. They're not trying to look for jobs and employment, and maybe there might be some other factors involved. They could have like a disability. They could be handicapped. They could be, maybe if they're not physically impaired, they could be impaired like emotionally or mentally. They have some intellectual disabilities where they're not able to get a higher paying job because they simply are not capable of doing that. They don't have the mentality or the level of mentality to get those type of skilled jobs. Maybe they can get jobs that are on the lower end of the scale. That doesn't mean that that person has, a problem with just who they are. It's a disability, and there are some people who have not only physical disabilities, but maybe emotional and maybe intellectual disabilities. So everything that people are going through is a case by case situation. But what is sad is they always tend to racialize welfare, and it's always the people who are disadvantaged is always people of color. It's black people. Number one, the single mom. This is the typical version of what people would assume or would think that a single mom is. She's got to be black, rollers in the hair, looking like she just woke up out of bed, a cigarette. And so there's been multiple videos all on YouTube, again, once attacking black females, attacking single females and women with children. And it seems to be that this group that they constantly attack, and they as in it's usually black males the videos are coming from, and or it's men who maybe they wanted to live with a woman and the woman kicked them out because they weren't working or they weren't productive or they weren't being faithful, because these women aren't having babies by themselves. They can't make the babies on their own. So they've got to be having some kind of contact with some guy who's pretending or acting as he's a father, but he's really not there in the children's life. He's just there to see what he can take from the woman. And so eventually these situations, sometimes there are situations that work out and other times it doesn't. There are a lot of guys that live in these public housing situations with these women. Sometimes they're there and sometimes they disappear, and then they go to some other woman, and maybe they have different women they're bouncing around to. So there might be, it's not just the female, there's these men that you have to hold accountable for too, because look at all these babies. So you also have it, it's not just in the black culture, it's in the white culture and the Hispanic culture as well. I have to admit that I have seen a lot of poverty. I have seen a lot of the baby mama drama, and some Hispanic women who have a lot of baby daddies now. This is starting to be a new thing, believe it or not. It's not just the black culture that I've seen this in. I've seen it recently in the Hispanic culture, and very recently I've seen this. This is starting to be a thing where you have a woman, she'll have like 7 kids, and all of them are different daddies. And this is a Mexican woman. So, these guys, they sit here and they don't work and they play video games. The woman is buying them clothes, using her welfare money to buy them clothes and video games. So you might want to hold both of them accountable. So there are situations like that. And if you're going to talk about poor people, you got to talk about the wealthy people who are taking advantage of people who don't have, who really do need, and they're disadvantaged. So you have big banks, you have corporate farmers, big oil companies, and defense contractors. And again, once again, you have Walmart that is getting 6.2 million of the tax dollars in corporate welfare every year. And so they blame always the most vulnerable or poor, disadvantaged is children and women, single women, and a lot of times people who have physical disabilities, they have emotional disabilities, or they have intellectual disability. And what I dislike about all of these videos that have come out more recently, they show these women talking about their stories, but what they don't know is that these women didn't make these babies by themselves. You have to also hold these men accountable for getting the woman pregnant and not staying and helping her with the responsibility of being a parent. A lot of these men too are dodging child support, or they're mad at the woman because the fact that in order for her to receive the welfare, or the subsidy to take care of her children, and she has no other means to do so, if he's not going to be in their lives, he can't just escape like that. So it's either, you're going to help take care of the baby, or the government has, or the state, or however they do it, has to force him to take care of these children. So a lot of times, if the mother is one that reports that in order to take care of my children, I need to give up the baby's father's name or whatever, then they go after him for child support. So a lot of these videos are also coming from guys who owe child support and they've dodged child support, or they're paying child support. And these are examples of public housing. You're going to see examples of public housing, regular Section 8 housing, and it's all under Section 8. And then some housing looks better than the others. Usually the public housing is a little bit more, it's not as attractive. It's not the first pick for some people. But what I think is sad is that once again you have people blaming women, single women and children. They're saying, oh, we feel sorry for the children, but they're aiming it at women, and they have to steer it around to black women. It always goes that way, especially when it's coming from these black males that get on here and they do these nasty videos. And so what they're not telling you is they're the ones, they're drinking up the money, they're eating up the food, they want to sleep with her, they want to come around when they feel like it, they want to live with you for free, they don't want to help you, or they want to help you on their terms. They want to control that woman. Sometimes the woman is giving them everything, giving them free place to stay, and then they're sleeping around with some other woman in the same project, or they're sleeping around with women on the street somewhere making babies elsewhere. And that's why you see some of this is what's going on. So there are welfare kings. Welfare kings. See, they're always saying welfare queens, but there are welfare kings too. So that's what they're not telling you. And almost always the blame goes on the woman, and it's sad, and it shows you the level of disrespect that some of these males have for females. And that is why these women are not with these men. And some of them want to be with these men, but they can't, because these men have gone on to some other woman whom they found, maybe okay, this one has babies, I owe child support, now I'm going to go to this one who doesn't have babies yet, so I'll make new babies with her. And then when that relationship goes sour, then they disappear. So it's jumping from one haystack to the next. So there are welfare kings too. Thanks for listening.